We know we're living in a crueler Britain where austerity and cuts are actually undermining people, damaging their lives, making it much harder for them instead of helping. 6 years, I think, of the Tories, both as the Condemn coalition and now with Theresa May on her own. We've seen what's happened to the fabric of Britain, and if you ever wonder why a Labour government is needed, we just have to look at what they're doing. We're going to just let you know, for those who want, we'll finish by 2 o'clock. We'll have questions after the speakers. We've got a fantastic lineup here, starting with Ros Wynne-Jones, who writes the Real Britain column in the Mirror, and I always consider her to be the conscience of the paper. Ros.
Hello, thank you very much for coming here today. I wanted to just speak first because I wanted to explain why I've chosen to...
She's got terrible mic technique, she has. Do you want to take that?
I leave it to the professionals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on, take that. There you go.
Yeah, it's long enough. Right, yeah, before we start, I just wanted to explain a bit about the people that I've invited to speak today and why I've invited them. Dave Johns, next to me here, is the star of I, Daniel Blake, an extraordinary film by Ken Loach that you may have already heard about, and if not, I'm sure that you will very soon. When I saw a preview of this film recently, it brought me to tears because it was like watching the work that I do in the Real Britain column every week just basically brought to life. Even this week, I wrote a story that was so similar that could have come straight out of the script. A 58-year-old guy, David Sugg, who's seriously ill with a brain aneurysm, has been told by his neurosurgeon he's got to avoid stress and stay at home. The DWP say he's got to come for an assessment. He writes to them, he says, I can't come for an assessment because this is the state of my brain. They say, well, you have to come, otherwise you'll be under a sanction. So what's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to risk his life, or does he get his benefits, which he needs to survive? That's not just Ken Loach, that's Kafka, and that's the system that we know millions of people are facing, a very brutal system. So David went to his appointment last week because he felt that he'd had no choice. When he went, he told me that he left a sealed envelope on his desk for the Essex coroner, which basically said, if you're looking into the reason for my death, I'm hoping I can save you some time. I was killed by an uncaring and spiteful Tory government. Amazingly, luckily that letter wasn't needed, but obviously his neurosurgeon is still saying that the stress that he's under could, still cost him his life. So 6 years into this vicious austerity project, things for disabled people are somehow actually getting worse, which is one of the reasons that we've asked Liz Carr to come and talk to you today. Somehow the books continue to balance on the backs of those who did the least to cause a financial crisis and can least afford to pay for it. And Liz is a huge part of the fight back on that, so she needs our support and solidarity. To me, there are 2 front lines in the war that's being waged against ordinary people by Tory austerity, and they're basically 2 sides of the same very bitter coin. We've got the treatment of the disabled, elderly, sick and unemployed, and then the treatment of low-waged, exploited workers, which kind of go hand in glove together. And 3 years after writing the column, starting to write it, the letters I get every week continue to appall me, basically. We have workers who are saved a mean that they can't ask for a toilet break, self-employed mothers forced to work 3 days after giving birth, or supposedly self-employed, disabled people left in their own urine, workers walking 4 miles to work to be told that there's no hours for them today, and if you want to complain, there'll never be any hours for you ever again. So for these people, and I guess this is what this is about today, there's not a long political game. People keep talking about a long political game. There's no long political game for these people. Every day without a Labour government means that their lives are so much more difficult. Their kids are not getting enough nutrition for their brains to grow properly. They're having to go to school in shoes that pinch and let in water. And every day without a Labour government means their lives are smaller and colder and have less potential and less joy. And it's just, we haven't got years for the Labour Party to get its act together. I keep hearing from people, and I'm sure there are none of them in this room, that some members of the Labour Party feel they're suffering from an existential crisis. I think if you're one of those people, you should go to one of the many excellent food banks in Liverpool and go and talk to people there and then get a grip and stop having an existential crisis. Because there are people that I talk to week in, week out, who even on, by Wednesday they're living by candlelight because they can't afford to get their electricity on. And there are people who, they're skipping their meals to feed their kids. Okay, let's prioritise those people. That's what our movement's supposed to be about. So, and I can't understand how you can not know what the Labour Party's for when you're looking at someone like Mike Ashley with his pockets stuffed full of £50 notes. Some of his zero-hour workers will be lucky to earn in a week. When you look at Sir Philip Green cruising around the Greek islands on 100 million floating palace, while the workers, his workers, are still closing down the stores that he's basically run aground. We look at these kind of the Uberisation of our economy, which sounds like a really cool modern phenomenon, but actually is really just a very old idea of how to exploit workers served up cold by a delivery rider. So look, I mean, we're back to the bad old days of piecework and day labour, and if the Labour Party struggles to find its meaning in that context, then we actually don't deserve to survive. That's my opinion. But I think we have to talk about hope, and the Metro Mayors, for which Andy's standing in Manchester, will carry with them an unprecedented possibility, I think, of change for some of the poorer bits of our country. That's going to be an extremely important part of the next few years. And also, we have to thank Unite and the rest of the trade union movement for just really mounting the most extraordinary defence of workers on poverty pay and in insecure work over the last few months. It's just been amazing. The stuff that, Unite and the GMB have done with Sports Direct and companies like Hermes is actually making an actual difference to people's lives on a daily basis. Mike Ashley's been shamed and humbled, really, by his own workers, but with the support of trade unions, and I think it's an amazing achievement. And that brings me to the star of the show today, Betty Tebbs, a woman who, as soon as I met, I wanted to bring to this conference, who at 98 years old is still a very proud trade unionist and has more guts and fight than anyone I've met in a really long time. I'll tell you what they said on the way. I wanted Betty to come here today because I think we're living through difficult times. We feel battered and bruised, and we keep losing, and there are people who are losing faith. And I think Betty has been a union member fighting for workers' rights for 84 years, wow, since 1932, which was at the moment when she collected her first pay packet from East Lancs paper mill and found it was 2 shillings short because she was a girl, basically. So at 98, she's still a proud member of Unite Community, as I was saying, and she's also looking forward to sending her telegram back to the Queen. And it's thanks to heroes like Betty that a girl can't be paid less than a boy working in a factory even more, even though I know she'll tell you the fight for equal pay still very much goes on. And Betty's actions have changed just innumerable lives in the many, many factories that she's organised in over all those years. She's fought for better pay, better conditions, the same fights we're having right now today as we face down these, the new satanic mills of globalisation. So today, when our movement feels divided, I wanted Betty to come here because she shows us that history's long, and also reminds us that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. So, thank you, Betty. And I hope that all of the people on this panel inspire you to keep doing everything that you're doing, because our country's full of Daniel Blakes and David Suggs and kids with no shoes and mums, working mums at the food bank, and they need us to get rid of the Tory government, not in 10 years' time, but now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ros. I did say she's the conscience. She's also an inspiration for the rest of us on the paper.